Eleanor Grayson sat at her oak dining table, the one her late husband, Harold, had carved with his own hands 50 years ago. The wood bore the scars of time scratches from her children's crayons, faint rings from coffee mugs, and a deep gouge where her grandson, Timmy, had once tested a pocket knife. She ran her fingers over the imperfections, each one a memory, each one a tether to a life she wasn't ready to release. The house smelled of lavender and old books, a scent that had woven itself into her very being. But today, the air carried something else, tension. Her son, Michael, sat across from her. His wife, Laura, beside him. Their faces were a study in practiced sympathy, but Eleanor could see the impatience flickering in their eyes. Michael cleared his throat, pushing a glossy brochure across the table. Silver Pines Retirement Community. It read, with a smiling couple on the cover, surrounded by manicured gardens and pastel-colored walls. Mom, it's time to think practically, Michael began, his voice smooth, rehearsed. This house is too big for one person. The maintenance, the taxes, it's a lot. Laura and I have been researching, and Silver Pines is perfect. They've got activities, a dining hall, even a little library. Eleanor's gaze flicked to Laura, who nodded enthusiastically, her diamond earrings catching the light. It's called creative downsizing, Laura said, her tone bright, as if she were pitching a vacation. You'll have so much freedom, Eleanor. No more worrying about leaks or mowing the lawn. Freedom. The word landed like a stone in Eleanor's chest. Freedom from what? From the home where she'd raised her children. From the garden where she and Harold had planted roses every spring. From the attic filled with boxes of letters, photos, and her mother's quilts. She forced a smile, her hands trembling slightly as she folded them in her lap. I appreciate your concern, she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. But I'm not ready to leave this house. It's home. Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. Mom, we're not saying you have to decide today. But you're 78. Things happen. What if you fall? What if something breaks and you can't fix it? We just want you to be safe. Safe. Another word that felt like a cage. Eleanor looked past them, out the window to the maple tree in the front yard, its leaves turning crimson in the autumn light. She remembered Michael climbing that tree as a boy, his laughter echoing through the branches. Now he sat here, a man in his 50s, talking about her life as if it were a problem to be solved. I'll think about it, she said finally, knowing she wouldn't. Not in the way they wanted. That night, alone in her bedroom, Eleanor pulled a shoebox from under her bed. Inside was the deed to the house. Its edges yellowed, but the ink still clear. Harold had insisted they own it outright. No mortgage. No debt. This is ours, Ellie, he'd said, his eyes bright with pride. Ours and our families. Forever. She traced his signature, her heart aching. Michael and Laura didn't understand. To them, this house was a burden, a relic. To her, it was a legacy. The idea came to her in the quiet hours before dawn, as she sat with a cup of chamomile tea, staring at the deed. If they wanted creative, she'd show them creative. She wasn't just going to sit back and let her life be downsized. She'd rewrite the story her way. The next morning, Eleanor drove to the local library, her hands steady on the wheel of her old Buick. The librarian, Mrs. Carter, greeted her with a warm smile. Eleanor, what brings you here so early? I need to look up some legal documents, Eleanor said, her voice firm. Property laws, trusts, that sort of thing. Mrs. Carter raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. She led Eleanor to a computer and showed her how to access the county's legal archives. For hours, Eleanor pored over dense texts, her reading glasses slipping down her nose. She took notes in a spiral notebook, her handwriting neat but determined. By noon, she had a plan. She called her old friend, Margaret, a retired attorney who lived 2 towns over. Margaret arrived that afternoon, her silver hair pulled into a bun, her eyes sharp despite her 80 years. Over coffee at Eleanor's kitchen table, she listened as Eleanor explained her idea. "You want to rewrite the deed?" Margaret asked, leaning forward. "To what end?" "I want to make sure this house stays in the family," Eleanor said. "Not just for Michael, but for his kids. And their kids. I want it to be a place they come back to, not something they sell off the moment I'm gone." Margaret nodded slowly. "It's possible, but it's tricky. You need to set up a trust. Maybe a family trust with specific conditions. It'll take time, and you'll need to get Michael on board or at least make it airtight so he can't contest it." "Then let's make it airtight," Eleanor said, her jaw set. For the next week, Eleanor and Margaret worked tirelessly. They drafted documents, consulted with a local notary, and even met with a young lawyer Margaret recommended to ensure everything was legal. Eleanor learned terms she'd never thought she'd need: irrevocable trusts, fiduciary duties, remainder man clauses. Each night, she fell into bed exhausted but alive, her mind buzzing with purpose. Michael called daily, his tone growing sharper. "Mom, have you looked at the Silver Pines brochure? They're holding a spot for you." "I'm still thinking," Eleanor would reply, her voice calm but resolute. She didn't tell him about the trust. Not yet. By the end of the week, the trust was nearly complete. Eleanor named her grandchildren, Timmy and Sarah, as the primary beneficiaries. With strict conditions, the house could never be sold, only passed down. If Michael wanted to live in it, he could, but he'd have to maintain it. She even included a clause for community use. A portion of the land could be used for a small neighborhood garden, a nod to the roses she and Harold had loved. As she signed the final documents, Eleanor felt a weight lift. This was her rebellion, her way of saying no to being erased. But it wasn't enough. She needed Michael to understand, not just the legalities, but the why. Eleanor invited Michael and Laura over for dinner that Sunday. She spent the day cooking roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans from her garden. The house smelled warm and inviting, a deliberate contrast to the sterile brochures they'd been pushing. As they sat down, Eleanor noticed Michael glancing at the walls, the furniture, as if appraising what could be sold. "Mom, this looks amazing," Laura said, her smile tight. "But you shouldn't be going to all this trouble. At Silver Pines, they handle all the meals." Eleanor ignored the comment, passing the potatoes. "I wanted to talk to you both about something important," she said, her voice steady. "I've been doing some thinking of my own. About the house." Michael's fork paused midair. "Mom, please don't tell me you're digging in your heels. We've been over this. Let me finish." Eleanor interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. She pulled a folder from beside her chair and slid it across the table. "I've set up a family trust. The house stays in the family, for Timmy and Sarah, and their children someday. It can't be sold. Ever." Laura's smile faltered. Michael's face reddened. "A trust," he said, his voice rising. "Mom, what are you talking about? You can't just—" "I can," Eleanor said, meeting his gaze. "And I did. This house isn't just a building. It's where you grew up. It's where your father and I built our life. I won't let it be torn down or sold off for condos." Michael leaned back, his jaw tight. "This is about Silver Pines, isn't it? You're doing this despite us. No, Eleanor said, her voice softening. This is about love. For you. For your children. For what this family means. I know you think I'm being stubborn, but I'm protecting something bigger than me. Laura reached for the folder, flipping through the documents. Eleanor, this is extreme. You didn't even consult us. I didn't need to, Eleanor said. This is my home. My decision. The room fell silent. The only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Michael stared at the table, his hands clenched. Eleanor's heart ached. She hated seeing him like this. But she couldn't back down. Not now. Michael, she said quietly. Do you remember the summer you broke your arm falling out of the maple tree? Your father carried you inside. And we sat right here, eating ice cream to make you feel better. This house holds those moments. It's not just my nights, yours, too. Michael's eyes flickered, a crack in his frustration. That was a long time ago, Mom. It doesn't have to be, Eleanor said. You could bring Timmy and Sarah here more often. Let them make their own memories. Laura closed the folder with a snap. Eleanor, we're just trying to make things easier for you. This feels like you're pushing us away. I'm not, Eleanor said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm inviting you in, but on my terms. Dinner ended awkwardly, with Michael and Laura leaving earlier than usual. Eleanor stood at the door, watching their car disappear down the street. She felt a pang of loneliness, but also a spark of triumph. She'd taken control, not just of the house, but of her story. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Eleanor threw herself into preserving the house's legacy. She sorted through the attic, organizing photos and letters into albums for her grandchildren. She invited Timmy and Sarah over, teaching them to bake Harold's favorite oatmeal cookies in the kitchen. Their laughter filled the house, and for the first time in months, Eleanor felt alive. But Michael's silence worried her. He called less often, and when he did, his tone was clipped. Laura sent polite texts about Silver Pines, but Eleanor sensed the strain. She knew she'd hurt them, even if she hadn't meant to. The trust was a wall she'd built, not just to protect the house, but to protect herself from feeling discarded. One afternoon, while pruning the roses, Eleanor saw Michael's car pull into the driveway. He stepped out alone, his face tired but softer than before. He carried a small box, and as he approached, Eleanor saw it was one of Harold's old toolboxes. Mom, he said, setting it down. I've been thinking about what you said. About the house. The memories. Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron, her heart pounding. And I was wrong, he said, his voice low. I got so caught up in trying to fix things. I didn't see what this place means. To you. To me. I found this in my garage, Dad's tools. I thought maybe we could fix that loose step on the porch together. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. They spent the afternoon working side by side. The rhythm of hammer and nail a quiet bridge between them. For the first time, she felt he was listening not just to her words, but to her heart. As the sun set, Michael sat on the porch steps, looking out at the maple tree. I don't want to lose this, Mom, he said, but I'm still worried about you. What happens when you can't manage the house anymore? Then we'll figure it out together, Eleanor said. But it'll be our choice, not just yours. Michael nodded, a small smile breaking through. Fair enough. That night, Eleanor added a new clause to the trust. If she could no longer live in the house, Michael and his family would have first right to move in, provided they kept it in the family. It was a compromise, a way to keep the door open. Months passed, and the tension between Eleanor and Michael began to ease. The trust was finalized, notarized, and filed with the county. Eleanor felt a quiet pride every time she walked past the deed, now framed on her living room wall. It was more than a legal document, it was her declaration of independence, her refusal to be swept aside. She threw herself into new projects. The community garden clause in the trust inspired her to start a small plot in her backyard. She invited neighbors to join, and soon, children were planting carrots while their parents swapped stories over lemonade. The garden became a hub, a place where Eleanor's roses bloomed alongside tomatoes and marigolds. Timmy and Sarah visited often, their hands dirty from digging, their faces bright with pride. But not everything was perfect. Laura remained distant, her texts polite but cold. Eleanor sensed her daughter-in-law's resentment, as if the trust had been a personal slight. One afternoon, Laura stopped by unannounced, her arms crossed as she stood in the kitchen. "Eleanor, I need to be honest," Laura said, her voice tight. "This trust, it feels like you don't trust us. Like you think we'd sell this place the moment you're gone." Eleanor set down her teacup, choosing her words carefully. "Laura, it's not about trust in you. It's about trust in what this house means. I've seen families sell their history for convenience. I couldn't let that happen here." Laura's eyes softened, but only slightly. "I get it. I do. But Michael's been stressed. He feels like he's failed you, like he can't protect you the way he wants." Eleanor's heart sank. She hadn't meant to burden Michael. "I'll talk to him," she promised. "I want us to be a family. Laura, this house is for all of us." Laura nodded, but the air between them remained heavy. As she left, Eleanor felt a pang of doubt. Had she gone too far? Was the trust a wall that kept her family at arm's length? That evening, she called Michael. "I don't want you to feel like you failed me," she said, her voice trembling. "You're my son, and I love you. The trust isn't about keeping you out, it's about keeping us together." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I know, Mom," he said finally. "I'm trying to understand. It's just hard. I want to do right by you." "Then come home more," Eleanor said. "Bring the kids. Let's make new memories." He agreed, and over the next few weeks, he did. They painted the guest room together, Sarah choosing a soft blue that reminded her of the sky. Timmy helped Eleanor organize the attic, laughing over old photos of Michael in bell-bottoms. The house felt alive again, its walls echoing with laughter instead of arguments. But Eleanor knew the future was uncertain. Her knees ached more each winter, and the stairs were harder to climb. She began to research home modifications, ramps, handrails, a first-floor bedroom. She wanted to stay, but she wasn't naive. The trust was her safety net, but she needed a plan for herself, too. One day, while sorting through Harold's old books, she found a letter he'd written her before they married. "Ellie," it read, "whatever happens, make sure you live on your terms. You're stronger than you know." Tears stung her eyes as she tucked the letter into her pocket. Harold had always believed in her. She wouldn't let him down. She met with a contractor to discuss renovations, using savings she'd set aside. The cost was daunting, but she was determined. "I'm not leaving," she told the contractor, a kind man named Tom. "This is my home, and I'm making it work." Tom nodded, sketching out plans for a ramp and a widened doorway. "You've got spirit, Mrs. Grayson," he said. "This house is lucky to have you." As winter approached, Eleanor hosted a neighborhood potluck in the garden. The air was crisp, the tables laden with casseroles and pies. Michael and his family came, and for the first time in months, Laura smiled genuinely, helping Sarah serve lemonade. Eleanor watched them, her heart full. The trust had been her stand, But these moments of connection was her victory. That night, as she sat by the fire, Eleanor thought about the deed, the trust, the house. It wasn't just about ownership. It was about roots, about giving her family a place to return to, no matter where life took them. She'd rewritten the deed. Yes, but more than that, she'd rewritten her story, one of strength, love, and defiance. Spring arrived, painting the garden with bursts of color. Eleanor's roses bloomed brighter than ever, their petals a vivid reminder of the life she and Harold had cultivated. The community garden thrived, with neighbors tending their plots and children chasing each other through the rows. Eleanor felt a quiet pride watching it all, knowing she'd created something lasting. But beneath her satisfaction, a new challenge loomed. Her health was changing. The aches in her joints had grown sharper, and her energy waned faster than before. She could still manage the house, but the effort was greater now. Michael noticed. His worry etched in the lines of his face during their weekly dinners. "Mom, you're pushing yourself too hard," he'd say, watching her wince as she stood to clear the table. "I'm fine," Eleanor would reply, but the words felt hollow. She wasn't ready to admit how much she relied on her cane now, or how the stairs felt like a mountain some days. The trust protected the house, but it couldn't protect her from time. One morning, she found a letter in her mailbox from Silver Pines. It wasn't from Michael or Laura, but a generic flyer, offering a free consultation for seniors considering a simplified lifestyle. Eleanor crumpled it, her hand shaking. The idea of leaving her home still felt like betrayal. But doubt crept in. What if Michael was right? What if she couldn't keep up? She called Margaret, who arrived with a thermos of tea and a no-nonsense attitude. "You're not giving up, Eleanor," Margaret said, her voice firm. "You've got options. Home care, modifications, even a live-in aid if it comes to that. You built that trust to stay in control and let fear undo it." Eleanor nodded, her resolve strengthening. She met with Tom again, finalizing plans for the ramp and a small downstairs bathroom. The renovations would take most of her savings, but she didn't care. This was her home, her choice. She also began researching home care services, jotting down names and numbers in her notebook. She wasn't ready to need them yet, but she wanted to be prepared. Michael came over one afternoon, carrying a photo album he'd found in his basement. "I thought the kids might like to see these," he said, setting it on the table. The album was filled with pictures of him and his sister as children building snowmen in the yard, blowing out birthday candles in the kitchen. Eleanor's heart swelled as they flipped through it together. "You know," Michael said, his voice soft, "I used to think you were holding on to this house out of stubbornness. But I get it now. It's not just a house. It's us." Eleanor reached for his hand. "I just want you to have a place to come back to. Somewhere that feels like home, no matter what." He squeezed her hand, his eyes bright. "We will, Mom. I promise." The renovations began in early summer. The house buzzed with activity workers hammering, saws buzzing, dust settling on every surface. Eleanor didn't mind. Each change was a step toward staying, a way to honor her promise to herself and Harold. Timmy and Sarah helped when they could, painting baseboards and planting new flowers by the ramp. Their enthusiasm reminded Eleanor of herself at their age, full of dreams and determination. But Laura remained a question mark. She came to the potlucks and smiled for the kids, but Eleanor sensed her unease. One evening, as they washed dishes together, Eleanor decided to bridge the gap. "Laura, I know the trust upset you," she said, her voice gentle. "I never meant to make you feel left out." Laura paused, her hands still in the soapy water. "It's not that, Eleanor. It's just, I want what's best for you." And I don't know if this is it. You're working so hard, and I'm scared you'll burn out. Eleanor dried her hands, meeting Laura's gaze. I appreciate that. But this house, this life fight's what keeps me going. I'm not asking you to understand, just to respect it. Laura nodded slowly. I'm trying. I really am. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Eleanor felt a flicker of hope that they could find common ground. As the summer wore on, the renovations neared completion. The ramp gleamed in the sunlight, and the new bathroom was small but functional. Eleanor walked through her home, her cane tapping softly, and felt a surge of gratitude. She'd done the Isher way. By autumn, the house felt reborn. The ramp made the porch accessible, and the downstairs bathroom meant Eleanor no longer dreaded the stairs. She'd even hired a part-time aide, a kind woman named Clara, who came twice a week to help with cleaning and errands. Clara's presence was a compromise, but one Eleanor accepted. It allowed her to stay independent while easing Michael's worries. The community garden had grown, too. Neighbors now called it Ellie's Patch, a name that made her blush but secretly pleased her. She hosted a harvest festival, with tables spilling over with pumpkins, apples, and homemade jams. Timmy and Sarah ran a lemonade stand, their faces painted with grins as they handed out cups. Michael and Laura helped set up, and for the first time, Eleanor saw Laura laugh freely, her guard down as she chatted with neighbors. But life wasn't without its shadows. One chilly morning, Eleanor woke to a sharp pain in her chest. She dismissed it as indigestion, but Clara insisted on calling the doctor. The diagnosis was mild angina, manageable with medication, but a reminder that time was not her ally. The doctor was blunt. You need to reduce stress. Mrs. Grayson, your heart's strong, but it's not invincible. Eleanor took the news in stride, but it shook Michael. He showed up that evening, his face pale. Mom, this is what I've been afraid of. What if something happens and we're not here? I have Clara, Eleanor said, her voice calm. And I have you. Just a phone call away. I'm not going anywhere yet. He didn't argue, but she saw the fear in his eyes. It lingered in her mind, too, as she sat by the fire that night. She thought of Harold, of the life they'd built, and of the trust that now carried their legacy forward. She wasn't afraid of dying to face that fear when Harold passed, but she was afraid of leaving her family fractured. She decided to write letters to Timmy and Sarah, to be opened when they were older. In them, she poured out her love for the house, the garden, the family. This home is your roots, she wrote. No matter where you go, it's here for you. Hold on to it. Not just for me, but for each other. She sealed the letters and tucked them into the deed's frame, a hidden gift for the future. Michael began visiting more often, sometimes alone, sometimes with the kids. He'd sit with Eleanor on the porch, sipping coffee and talking about the past. One evening, he brought up Silver Pines, but not in the way he had before. I looked at their website again, he said, his tone thoughtful. They've got home care programs, too. Maybe we could look into something like that, so you can stay here longer. Eleanor smiled, touched by his effort. I'm already ahead of you, she said, telling him about Clara. But I'm glad you're thinking about it. We'll figure it out together. Laura, too, began to soften. She started joining Eleanor in the garden, asking about the roses and even planting a few of her own. One afternoon, as they pruned together, Laura said, I didn't get it before, why this house matters so much. But seeing the kids here, seeing you, I'm starting to. Eleanor's throat tightened. It's not just the house, she said. It's what it holds. Us. Laura nodded, her eyes bright. I want that for them, too. As winter loomed, Eleanor felt a quiet peace. The trust was her shield, the renovations her sword, and her family's growing understanding her reward. She wasn't naive, she knew challenges lay ahead, but she faced them with clarity. She'd rewritten the deed, not just on paper, but in the hearts of those she loved. Winter settled over the house like a soft blanket, the air sharp with frost. Eleanor's health stabilized, her medication keeping the angina at bay. Clara became a fixture, her cheerful presence a comfort on cold mornings. The house, with its new ramp and widened doorways, felt like a partner in Eleanor's fight to stay independent. The community garden went dormant, but Ellie's patch lived on in other ways. Neighbors dropped by with holiday cookies, and the local school asked to use the plot for a spring planting project. Eleanor agreed, thrilled at the idea of children learning to love the earth as she did. She began planning a small greenhouse, a gift to the neighborhood and a way to keep the garden alive year-round. Michael and his family spent Christmas at the house, the first time in years they'd stayed overnight. The living room glowed with lights, and the oak table groaned under the weight of a feast. Timmy and Sarah hung stockings by the fireplace, giggling over stories of their dad's childhood pranks. Laura helped Eleanor bake Harold's oatmeal cookies, their hands moving in sync. Michael carved the turkey, his smile easy for the first time in months. As they sat around the table, Eleanor raised her glass. To family, she said, her voice steady. And to this house, where we keep finding each other. Michael met her gaze, his eyes soft. To home, he said, and the others echoed him. After dinner, while the kids played in the living room, Michael pulled Eleanor aside. Mom, I've been thinking about the trust, he said. I was wrong to push you. This house, it's more than I realized. I want to help keep it going. For you. For the kids. Eleanor's heart swelled. That's all I've ever wanted, she said. For us to share it. He nodded, pulling her into a hug. We will. The new year brought changes. Eleanor and Michael met with a financial planner to ensure the house's upkeep was sustainable. They set up a small fund, using Harold's old investments, to cover taxes and repairs. Laura joined the garden committee, her enthusiasm surprising but welcome. She even suggested hosting a summer fair, with proceeds going to the greenhouse. Eleanor's health remained a quiet concern, but she faced it with pragmatism. She updated her will, ensuring Clara's services were covered and adding a clause for the garden's maintenance. She also gave Michael power of attorney, a gesture of trust that brought tears to his eyes. I won't let you down, Mom, he promised. Spring returned, and with it, the garden bloomed. Eleanor stood by the roses, her cane steady in her hand, watching Timmy and Sarah plant seedlings with their classmates. The greenhouse was under construction, its frame rising like a promise. Laura worked nearby, her laughter mingling with the children's. Michael joined Eleanor, his arm around her shoulders. You did this, Mom, he said, his voice thick. You kept us together. Eleanor smiled, her eyes on the horizon. We did it, she said. All of us. The deed, the trust, the garden, they were her legacy, but not her whole story. Her true victory was this moment, surrounded by family, rooted in a home that would outlive her. She'd rewritten the deed. Yes, but more than that. She'd rewritten their future where love, not loss, defined them. As the sun set, casting golden light over Ellie's patch, Eleanor felt Harold's presence, his words echoing in her heart, live on your terms. She had, and in doing so, she'd given her family a place to belong. Forever.